like to start off giving each of you a chance to introduce yourself and your company. Give us just an idea of sort of where you're coming from in terms of this app economy. So we start over here.
Hi, my name is Jeff Hayne. I'm the co-founder and CEO of a company called Accelerator, and we're a mobile enterprise platform. We help companies build applications, deploy the APIs in the cloud, and then do real-time analytics, basically. From a scope standpoint, we have about 100,000 apps on our platform in the app stores, and about 400 million devices that run our software. So we work with large companies and small companies, and really anybody who wants to build for the new app economy.
I'm Daniel Sachs, President and Co-CEO of AppDirect. AppDirect makes it really easy for businesses to find, buy, and manage the cloud tools they need. And for developers, we make it incredibly easy for them to get reach to businesses. So we have reach to over 20 million end business users. And if you want to monetize or sell your solutions, you can integrate to AppDirect, and we give you distribution through some of the biggest providers in the world, whether that be IBM, Comcast, AT&T, Samsung, or through smaller resellers as well.
I'm Jyoti Bansal. I'm founder and CEO of AppDynamics. At AppDynamics, we provide what we call application intelligence, which is the ability for people who are building complex apps, large enterprises, for them to get visibility into monitoring for performance, for business intelligence, for operational insights. About 2,000 large enterprises as customers, like companies like Expedia or a JP Morgan Chase or a FedEx. As every business builds more and more apps, we help them out.
So when we talk about the app economy, we're generally talking about mobile apps. That's really what is driving the app economy. But I'd be interested in your take on where we are in terms of sort of the growth cycle of this notion of app economy. Are we at the beginning phases? Is it matured? I mean, where are we? Anybody can jump in.
Well, I do think we are at the very beginning phase. Mobile is, it's really about, the biggest thing that's happening is that every consumer interaction, every human interaction is being transformed through software. So how does that happen? It will continue to grow. So we moved from web interfaces to mobile interfaces. And the mobile apps allowed a lot of innovation, a lot of disruption. But that's just the beginning of it. Now the IoT would be a huge part of it. There will be more and more touch points would be completely redefined. So it's the app economy, in my opinion, is just starting now.
Yeah, I think by 2019, there's going to be more connected devices totally that are non-PC, tablet, and mobile than there are today in PC, mobile, tablet. So I think it's really in terms of the way apps are going to be distributed, apps are going to be displayed, there's much more interaction cross-device. So that just shows how it's really just the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, our belief is if sort of this is a 20-year sort of cycle transformation between cloud and mobile and big data and devices, we're probably year 4 or 5 in that cycle. It's still very early. I think we see, on the enterprise side, very, very early, especially in certain types of applications, very tactical. On the disruption side, new businesses, the Ubers, the Ships, the Postmates, those are very, very fast mover advantage type opportunities to completely disrupt or reshape economies or reshape a whole business opportunity. So that's sort of the danger. I think if you're an enterprise, you're probably sort of traditional laggard and trying to figure out mobility and how it impacts my business. And sort of if you're a brand new startup coming out today, it's a significant opportunity to focus on that area and really create massive disruption and massive opportunity.
So we're relatively early, but definitely when we talk about the economy part of app economy, two of the main influencers are the two primary app stores, right? The Apple App Store and the Google Play App Store. So how do you see their influence in terms of supporting the app economy or potentially stifling it? I mean, it's so hard to get noticed on these app stores for a new app developer. So, and there's probably some app developers in this crowd who are struggling with that very question. So it'd be interesting on your take on the role the app stores play in this story.
I mean, I think that Google and Android really get a lot of recognition in terms of being an open app platform. But if you think about the dollars transacted in cloud or in software in general, if you're broadly defining app, most revenue is happening actually on the web layer. So if you think about how you pay for Spotify or Evernote or Box, you're actually subscribing online and you're paying a monthly recurring fee, which is far more significant than paying the 99-cent fee or getting a free app in the store. So in terms of number of downloads, there's a huge momentum and a lot of noise around the mobile app stores. But in reality, most of the economy is actually happening offline in a subscription-based way, which could be via the web, it could be even offline transactions.
Yeah, I would sort of agree. I think sort of first I think much like the early days of the web and search, discovery has been an issue. It still is an issue. And so I think that still is a significant opportunity for innovation and business model disruption, because much like the early days of the web, we had a real hard time finding things, and we worried a lot about how many websites were out there, and search and discovery and SEO and things like that came along to help that. I think we have a similar, we don't know what that is yet. Maybe there's a startup here that has figured that out, but I think that's a big opportunity in front of us. And so the second thing is, I think the business model shift is we're sort of in this early transformation of figuring out what the right model is, much like we did in the early days of the web, where now we're seeing the subscription economy and sort of new ways of transacting to monetize, and using maybe these as surface or reach or ways of interacting with content as a different way of content modeling. So.
I would agree. I think as an app developer, I would advise that do not be restricted from a business model perspective. The app stores are a discovery mechanism for consumers, and there's a huge advantage of App Store for the consumer perspective, that they can see which apps are reviewed properly. What we find at AppDynamics, we work with a lot of mobile developers who they rely a lot on the App Store rankings from a performance perspective, from the user experience perspective, and the consumers do need to have a way around it, right? So you have Yelp to find what's a good restaurant for consumers. You need some place where you can find what's a good app and what's not, so that the developers are accountable around that as well. So there is a huge advantage of that, but from a business model, from the economy side of it, as Dan said, there could be a lot of models that could be done which are not reliant completely on the App Store.
So I know all of you deal with enterprise customers. So for the enterprises who are serving, in particular, the consumer marketplace, so for example, retail or media or banking, they're struggling with this notion of mobile first, right? Customers are demanding mobile interfaces even more so than web interfaces or non-mobile web interfaces. But they're struggling with how to do that right, or whether it's web first or mobile first. So what are you seeing in terms of your enterprise customers, and are they getting their head around what it means to be mobile first?
They're trying. Just banking is a good example. We have about 50 million banking users on our platform, about probably 1,500 banks around the world. So, and some very significant sized brands, and it's a challenge, and the challenge is in some ways not technological, it's process and people challenges. Cloud, the rate of innovation, continuous development, continuous deployment, agile, all these things are significant disruptors for the cloud, independent of mobile. I mean, mobile's driving this sort of rate of innovation and speed and change that is unlike anything before. So a lot of the mindset has been very web-oriented mindset, which is we'll just build it once, deploy it, and we're done. And that's just not the way it happens. I think Google and Apple combined did about 20 releases last year between minor and major. And so you just don't have that. And the expectation from the end user now, from an end user computing standpoint, is that we're going to continually get innovation and opportunities and advancements because that's what everybody else does. And so enterprises just aren't set up for that. Just in general, independent of the technology, they're just not set up for that. And so that's a major problem that they're really suffering with. There's a new, I would say, set of leadership in a lot of big companies that are really starting to figure this out and driving. And they're looking for platforms and they're looking for processes to help them be more agile. And the cloud is an opportunity, but they're scared. You know, the DevOps is an interesting opportunity for CD and CI. But what about the 4,000 people that already work in their call center or their data center, right? It's a hard change that I think companies are going to have to go through, and that's going to take a little bit of time to go through that.
I think as an app developer, you really have to separate the experience for your different personas. So mobile first really makes sense for the end user. So in the context of the enterprise, if it's retail, if it's banking, you actually might want to enable the end user to have a subset of your application that's easy to use on the mobile device. And in that context, that component should be mobile first. But a lot of the complex transaction-based systems, a lot of the user management, the provisioning, things like that should still be web-based. And I think when you think about the increase of proliferation of devices, whether it's in manufacturing or in agriculture, where you're going to have apps and ecosystems in your truck or in your farm or whatever it might be, you have to think about where these devices are going to interact. So I think mobile first is really the predecessor of just thinking about device first. So what makes sense to be what the best interaction within that specific device? And I think that's the way developers should be thinking about it. It's not about mobile first only. It's really think about what user is going to use things in what device, how do you improve that user experience?
Yeah, we work with a lot of large enterprises, and I'll tell you, it's every enterprise is starting to realize that if they don't have a mobile-first strategy, they will be outcompeted by someone, because the consumers want mobile. So if you look at if you talk to the CIO of a very large bank like JP Morgan Chase, and you ask them, what's your most important app right now? 10 years ago, the answer was SAP. 5 years ago, the answer was their online banking. Now it is mobile banking, because more and more people are doing banking through mobile. So it's starting to change. The challenge is, how do they do that? It's a big culture problem, as you said. So a lot of times what we see is like a lot of the large enterprises, they know they can't change their culture to build that mobile app that quickly or to deliver that kind of experience. So many times they just spin it out as a separate startup, or they give it to independent application developers to help out with it, so who know how to build them and how to bring in that different kind of culture to build those apps.
Yeah, so you bring up an interesting point that only a few years ago, the enterprises thought of the word application as meaning some monolithic enterprise app like SAP or ERP app, and today it could be a mobile app. So that word application has shifted in meaning in the enterprise context. But even so, it's not just the software running on the phone, right? A banking mobile app, for example, may touch the cloud environment, may touch the mainframe, it goes onto the internal network. So there's this end-to-end problem that has exploded what it means to build an app and to run an app and to run an app at performance, right? Fast enough for consumers. So what do enterprises need to know to get that right? I mean, it's not just building mobile apps, right? There's so much more to it. So what do they need to do?
So,
Jyoti, why don't you start us off?
I think it's, you raise a very good point. A lot of times when people think about a mobile app, they think about just the app or the code running on your phone. The code running on your phone is less than 5% of the code. In most of the enterprises, it will be less than 1% of the code. 99% of the code is running in the data center, in the cloud. You have massively complex backend systems. All the heavy lifting is happening on the backend. So when, as an enterprise, when they put a mobile consumer experience out, for them, they have to make sure that everything that they have in the backend there, and many times even mainframe systems, you would think like, if you're building a mobile app, why would a mainframe be involved? But if you're a bank, large bank, and your users are the primary source of information for your users is in a mainframe, the mobile app, the click on the mobile app will go all the way down into the mainframe. So that's how most apps would be. So when someone thinks about the user experience, the performance, how good the apps are, it's really not just about the code running on your phone. It's really everything that goes behind it. The plumbing behind it becomes even more important.
Yeah, I would say what we try to sort of convince our customers to do is stop thinking about technology first and think about people first, or end user computing first, and be more empathy oriented. I mean, don't just we have a lot of customers that have started with, I'm just going to take an SAP application and shrink it to a mobile device and replicate the functionality, versus saying, what is the business problem I'm trying to solve, and how do I solve it in a new way? Maybe totally different than I've actually done that. And I think that's really where the opportunity is. And so I think there's a shift also happening in most big businesses where the line of business, the business buyer is going to drive more of the solution decisions versus IT. And hopefully those are going to be driven on ROI and business-oriented value things versus technology and plumbing-oriented. Of course, there's always technology and plumbing that has to come behind that. Of course, you need great monitoring and analytics and platforms and catalogs and all these things to make this stuff work. But for what purpose, I think? And so we try to really tell customers, forget mobile first. And all of course, those things from a technology are very important, but think about your end user in mind. What are you trying to do? This is a new opportunity. Uber is a good example, has reshaped the opportunity of how you change the experience from the worst experience to maybe a very delightful experience. How do you do the same thing as an enterprise? I mean, why do your employees have to do a certain business process a certain way? Or why do your customers have to interact with your brand this way? What if you could rethink that from an empathy-oriented way and then build the solution to meet that? I think that's where you get success in any of these new technologies.
Yeah, and I think in that friction, and you bring up the CIO and the relationship with the adoption of applications, I think for the last few years we always heard, for a CIO, should I go cloud? Now it's how do I do it and how fast do I do it? And they're realizing that it's not about mandating and signing big agreements with an SAP or with a big provider. It's actually enabling and partnering with the business units to say, okay, how as a CIO can I help you best adopt these plethora of services? So we find a lot of the businesses that are signing up to AppDirect, it's really that user-first path. So it could be a user testing out a certain CRM for a certain department in a geography, and that gains viral adoption. So as we've seen with the adoption cycles of different services, whether that be Slack or Yammer, user-first adoption, and then it draws attention to the CIO, and then the CIO can come and help negotiate agreements, provide more value. But there's really a shifting of roles in IT, and I think that's really a good example of what Jeff was saying.
Very good. So you brought up a very scary image in my mind. It's cramming a whole SAP app onto a phone. It's like, talk about
It happens.
a fate worse than
Not
death.
very well.
Yeah, but that does bring up an interesting point, and that is the consumerization of technology. That even for business-to-business enterprises or for employees within enterprises, they're expecting to use their phones to access enterprise technology, whether it's ERP or timesheets or other HR apps or whatever it is. And so that's an important trend as well. And how do you see that impacting this app economy as all of us who are all consumers, even if we work at big companies, are expecting to use our phones for just about anything? And what is that? How is that impacting sort of the world of the application?
It's a huge, if you think about it, like, just a lot of people who work in companies, we file expense reports. The process of filing expense reports was a very complicated process and time consuming and loss of productivity. Now, if, we use, at AppDynamics, we use this product called Concur. Very large SaaS company, now part of SAP, but they launched their mobile app about year and a half ago. The experience has completely changed. Even though it's the very traditional thing that we all do, filing expense reports, the experience is completely different. I can take picture of a receipt. I can approve expenses for employees very easily on my phone. I can find everything that I need to do. I haven't logged into the web interface for Concur for at least a year now, because everything I could do is mobile app. Same thing applies for like signing documents. As employees, we will sign things, right? So with everything that I do now is DocuSign. I would use the DocuSign mobile app. I can sign any kind of document, any contract, anything just from my phone. So it's all really about the experience. We as humans, we do a lot of things in our personal lives, and like we are finding a taxi, we are booking a hotel, we are buying music. All of that will do through a device that's just better experience, which is a mobile phone. It will probably change to even more devices. But we do things as part of our work also, filing expense reports, signing documents, sending emails, whatnot, right? All of that will also be defined through a better consumer experience.
Yeah, people at work deserve and demand better. And when they see the experiences they get in some of the best of breed consumer tools, they want to emulate that. And if not, we find that they circumvent IT. So what's really critical is how do you deliver those delightful experiences in a way that reduces friction, but adds productivity and maintains security. And I think that is really the critical piece that every business owner needs to be thinking about, but as well for those of you in the room who are app developers, to think about it as what's that end user wanting, and if you're giving them a delightful user experience that's making their life easier and making them more productive, then chances are that will then pay back, and the CIO will invest, or whoever the business owner or the decision maker is will start investing and paying, and that's how you can really generate momentum. And when we look at some of the best fast-growing cloud companies, app companies in the Valley today, they're doing it typically by creating far better 10x user experiences, even in the enterprise, as opposed to just saying, take something and make it incrementally better, like an SAP app, and stuff it on a mobile phone.
Yeah, I mean, in the knowledge information economy, and people are your highest valued asset. So it's kind of funny. I was talking to one of our customers, unnamed, about 6 months ago, and he said, "Oh, we're just building a BDE app. It doesn't matter. It's just our employees." And it's sort of like, that's just kind of insane. I mean, these are your sort of most valuable assets in your company, and yet you're sort of and that's been the attitude of IT for so long, right? We can control it because it's our employees, and we can make them do something. I don't think that works in the app economy. Certainly not with the millennial and the new generations coming along. I think you sort of have to think about empathy and experience, and I think you really have to think about what's best for my users. And frankly, you should want to, because these are the investments that you're making in the company, and they're your most skilled assets up and down sort of the ranks. And so I think that as a developer, as a company, those are probably in some ways the most profound opportunities in mobile that you have in cloud, is how do I rethink all this for the benefit of my employees and thus for the benefit of my customers and the people I serve.
So we only have a couple minutes left, but one of the interesting trends today is the Internet of Things, right? Today, when we think of mobile app, we think of the endpoint being on a phone or a tablet or some intermediary type of device, but it could very well be on a piece of retail signage or on a traffic light or on a piece of factory equipment. So what is this Internet of Things going to be doing to this app economy over the next 5-10 years?
I think the Internet of Things is probably the biggest thing that's going to happen to the app economy. It's the definition of app. It's the definition of app. App doesn't mean it's an iPhone app or an Android app. App could be anything. App could be the way I would define an app is something that will provide the interface of technology and software to a user. So it could be through a phone, it could be through a tablet, it could be through your thermostat, it could be through your in your car, in your TV, it could be on a table. Instead of taking notes on your phone, you can probably just write on a table and it goes into the cloud. So there will be all sort of apps and with a different kind of a consumer interface. And the consumer interfaces would be more would be more widely spread out over time. So things we'll see probably millions of times more devices out there in the next 10 years than we have right now.
Yeah, and with that increase of devices and with all those devices being connected, we can actually be smarter about the way we make intelligent decisions. So with every device being live, active, there's trillions of decisions that are happening, tons of data that's being aggregated. So from a big data perspective and an intelligence perspective, the collective lessons learned from all these things can help provide businesses insights as to how they can take the right actions to optimize revenue, reduce costs. So I think the next wave, of connected devices will open up a wave for intelligent decision making, which will really help the whole global cloud economy.
Jeff, you get the last word.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I've been speaking about this for years, but I think we're starting to see this happen as anticipatory computing. I think we're moving from this sort of mobile apps point to point, one interaction, micro interactions, experiences, to more anticipatory computing. You're starting to see this with the watch, right, where the devices, and this is where Internet of Things I think is going to be the most exciting, where all of these devices together create an experience and anticipate computing. And so I think that's where we're going with Internet of Things. It's really going from the single point-to-point interaction to this sort of multi-point anticipatory computing ambient opportunity.
Well, that's all we have time for, so thank you very much. Great panel.